Ahead of the Herd, Results That Lead is a limited series podcast from GPS Dairy Consulting, highlighting how the next generation of consultants is driving meaningful change on modern dairies. In each episode, GPS NextGen consultants share how they approach complex challenges, earn trust quickly, and turn insight into action without being bound by how it's always been done. These conversations focus on thinking, leadership, and accountability. If you're interested in what it really takes to stay ahead of the herd, these conversations are for you.
Some challenges have been around so long they've stopped being questioned. Low-level inefficiencies, chronic bottlenecks, that's just how it works mindset. But progressive doesn't come from accepting the familiar. It comes from challenging assumptions and seeing operations with clear, unbiased eyes. Today's conversation, hosted by GPS founding partner King Hickman, is about questioning what's routine, respecting what's been built, and identifying opportunities others have overlooked. King, take it away.
Well, thanks, Peggy. We're here today joined by three of our GPS consultants who we think approach problems in a different way with fresh eyes, and they really focus on outcomes. And we're here to kind of pick their brain on how they think. What I've noticed working with them is they do think differently than I do. They're more apt to go for the solutions faster. And
we're younger, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, younger minds, more aggressive. That's right. So let's meet the consultants. We're going to start with Caleb Burch, who brings a strong execution mindset to every operation he works with. He's focused on what happens day to day in the barn, from fresh cows to forage quality, and on turning ideas into actions that teams can actually sustain. Caleb keeps the conversation grounded and results focused. So, Caleb, question to start off. What's a change you see talked about often but rarely executed well on farms? And what gets in the way?
Yeah, so for me, the dairy farm's all about people, right? And as dairymen, as dairy farmers have graduated from just managing crops and cows and feed as if their job wasn't hard enough before. Now you throw in a complex team of people, and it's really challenging because I don't think a lot of dairymen are originally wired that way to want to be people managers,
right,
so to speak. But that's truly what sets, in my opinion, the very best farms apart from the rest, is the farms that are able to generate and foster a culture of accountability, but also of learning and of pushing their team to do better and do more, and not just being satisfied with the approach of, hey, employees show up because they're paid to do so, and you show up and you do the job and you go home. It's the farms that are able to identify talent within their organization and then take that talent and mold them to become the next leaders of the farm.
And what do you find gets in the way of that happening on some of your dairies?
To me, it's more the time it takes and the intentionality it takes. It's really hard, right? I mean, they have a lot on their plate. They still have to manage the crops. They still have to manage the feed. They still have to manage the cows, the dairy markets. I mean, dairy farming is a tough job. And so it really takes intentionality and time set aside to evaluate where your culture is on your dairy and where your talent lies within your employee pool, and maybe it's the next middle manager that you want to train, maybe it's the next owner, the next generation. But to me, that's the most important thing, is the dairies that truly take the time and the effort and make it a priority to invest in those people and invest in their learning and education, and that's where we're here to help too. So we're filming today from the herd manager retreat in Wisconsin Dells, and that's exactly why we have this, is to partner with our dairies to help foster that along.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have Andre Pereira. Andre works at the intersection of technology, nutrition, and modern dairy systems, right? He's deeply involved in robotic operations, amino acid balancing, and workflow optimization, always with an eye towards practical implementation. Andre brings a forward-looking perspective grounded in the real world of application. So, Andre, where do you see technology or modern systems helping producers challenge the status quo instead of just adding complexity?
Thank you, King. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic nowadays, right? We are buried with data and buried into technology nowadays. A lot of talk about AI lately. A lot of talk about these new tools that are going to help everybody to do what they need to do. And but is it more complex? Is it hard to understand? Absolutely, it's very hard to understand. And I feel like the practical aspect of it is to, instead of making it more data, more tools, more little things you have to learn about, actually try to make it simpler and some kind of tool that will augment your work on the farm. Because like Caleb just said, being a dairy farmer is really hard. You have a lot of things in your plate, a lot of things to do, but how do you augment that? And I love technology. I just like that. I love new things, see what's out there. I love to listen about it, listen to podcasts and videos and stuff about new tech that's coming out. And one that's been very interesting that I've been very interested in listening more and more is use of camera, so videos, into what we call neural networks. So these are large language models from artificial intelligence that help compile all the data from that farm using either cameras, data from your rumination and behavior system in your farm, data from your herd management software. So it helps you compile all of that into this, what they call large language models, right? That's what it is. Basically, it grabs all that data and makes it simple for you. So I've been looking a lot into that, and I think I'm actually very excited with the future of where that's coming. I don't know if some of you have seen those new goggles by Meta. I'm not going to make any advertisement here or anything. I'm just saying that they're interesting. It's just like regular glasses with a camera around it, and you can actually see on the screen of that glass. It gives you information. It gives you stuff in there. So I'm just envisioning here, of course, because I like technology and I like to envision the future. I'm just envisioning here, you walk in the barn wearing glasses just like that, so it's nothing out of the ordinary, but you're actually doing a herd check or checking what's going on with your cows, and right there it shows on your screen, in your goggles, what's going on with that cow today. What's her rumination status? What's her behavior?
Just have to look at the cow and it brings it up.
Yep, just look at that. Or even, you may need to prompt and say, tell me about this cow. And it tells you what's going on. So in summary, you're using technology as a partner and not fighting against all the data. You're actually using it to augment your capacity into that farm. For example, to do these herd checks, see I have 10 cows to look today for health issues. Let's go around, let's look at them and see what they're doing.
So rather than just adding complexity to the dairy, you're helping them show how to use that information to actually make decisions.
And be more efficient, right? Because we only have 24 hours per day in a dairy farm. I'm sure most dairy farmers would like to have a 48-hour day, but with a limited amount of time, you have to be quick and efficient about what you do.
Great, thank you. Lastly, we have Trent Dado. Lastly,
not least though,
but not least, Trent brings a systems-level perspective to dairy consulting with a focus on precision, integration, and clarity. He's known for challenging assumptions by connecting nutrition, management, and technology, helping teams see where complexity is hiding real opportunity, right? Trent's strength is asking better questions that lead to simpler, more effective decisions. So Trent, where do you most often see complexity masking a much simpler opportunity for improvement?
Yeah. Well, I think you could go a lot of different directions with complexity on dairy, right? Because it's a very complex system, right? One of the adages I always like to use with clients is the ultimate goal, right, is to have a boring dairy. The best dairy in the world is going to be the most boring one, right? The same things happen at the same time every day, 365 days a year. So I think when we're looking at where to find complexity on our dairy, it's where's the attention getting drawn to, or where are things uncomfortable, where does that friction exist? In our line of work, a lot of that encounters in the feeding systems, right? So a lot of times when we come up with some sort of issue, let's call it gut health issues, or production's down, or we have a rash of DAs or something like that, these answers can be extremely complex, right? We can get really down to the nitty gritty around the biology. How does a DA happen? What's the microbiome of the rumen in the small intestine that's causing her to go off feed? And all these can kind of mask, as you said, the real solution, because it sometimes can be as simple as, well, they were out of feed for 4 hours last night, or there's a big line of butyric halage in the feed. So I think a lot of times it's about not overreacting to some of the things that are happening on the dairy, and making sure that we're getting the fundamentals right, to make sure we're avoiding the complex situations and just getting the dumb, boring, basic things done every single day.
I always tell producers, when you hear hoof beats behind you, think horses, not zebras.
Yeah.
Just what you're saying. I think, they tend to want to go to the zebras first. It's like, well, let's look at the obvious things.
Which I find even myself falling into that pit sometimes, where we're all trained in nutrition. We love science. We love technology. We want to really get down in the details of it. But a lot of the times it's a simple answer. I'll give you one more example, because this one was a really good learning lesson for me. So on a client, we were really struggling with fresh cow performance. We kept getting loose manures, variable manures. We couldn't figure out. Lots of TMR sampling, drew bloods, changed some products around, all that type of jazz. But just so happens one day when the manager was out watching the feeder mix, that instead of just adding from the bin that had all the fresh cow concentrate, he was putting in half fresh cow, half pre-fresh mineral into the bin. So altogether, it looked like he was adding the right amount of weight. When you're looking at all the data, the feeding software, it looked right, but you had to be there physically watching them add the mineral, add the concentrate to the mix to see that problem. So we tried everything on this, and we made it as complex of an issue as we could before we went out and even watched them mix the load, right? So sometimes it's just about getting down and seeing and observing what's actually happening on the dairy.
Yeah. So this is a question, I think, for everybody. We could just conversationally talk through this one. It brings up a little bit of what Caleb said earlier, but where do you see teams hesitate the most when it's time to act on a new idea? What makes them hesitate? Resistance.
I'll let Caleb go first.
Oh, thanks. Well, the phrase that comes to mind is, well, we've never done it like that before.
Right.
Or we don't do that here. That'll never work here. Yeah, I'm sure we've all heard a lot.
We tried that a couple of years ago. Yeah, that's a common one.
All right.
I feel like sometimes also being afraid of taking ownership of what they need to do, saying, I'm going to be responsible for this. Am I actually okay to do that, right?
Yeah, changing the system of who's doing what, who's accountable for what. Part of the hesitation, I think, sometimes depends on the type of change. Some changes I think dairies are really accepting with. A lot of times, like, hey, I want to try out this new gut health product. A lot of time they'll just say, yep, Trent, go ahead and do that. But I see the area that creates the most hesitation is when it changes the workflow, especially for employees.
Right.
And this goes back to what Caleb was talking about. Dairies that have not as close a relationship or not engaged in that culture of learning are really hesitant to change certain protocols that might change the way the employee does something, because it then forces us to retrain, have that conversation, opens us up for, well, what if they get this protocol wrong? So that's where I see the most hesitation, is when it involves a person or a protocol that requires attention.
No, absolutely agree. And there is one, I give an example, a herd I work with, that they have really good management in there, but I can see the supervisor is under the manager. They don't want to take that and do it. They need that. They need the manager to tell them, yeah, it's okay to do it. But the manager is expecting the supervisors to just take ownership and say, you have the capability. We've been training you. We've been working with you to have the capability to make the choice and make the decision and go for it. So it's something to work on, I think.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a side, but I hear that all the time. It's like, I wish that so-and-so employee would just see that problem, see that broken gate, or see that sick cow and just handle it. And oftentimes, whenever you ask that question, I wish that person would, like, well, did you ever tell them that they
have you empowered them?
Have you empowered them to do it?
Right.
Do they know that's what they're supposed to be doing? Is that their expectation? So I find a lot of times when we're encouraging change, we forget to make that ask.
Right.
Or has that employee made a move on their own and then you got upset with them?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's a good way to stop middle managers from making decisions.
From being creative. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about data versus reality. You guys are all data-driven people. But how do you balance what the data says with what the barn is telling you?
Yeah. Can I go first on this one?
Please do.
To me, when I first started consulting, I was really into data, really liked it, compiling it, making fancy Excel spreadsheets. Over the last few years, I've basically come to the consensus that just about all data that we use on the dairy is wrong,
Right.
and that the assumption should be that it's wrong, and you need to go to the cows or managers first to find the answer. So I found actually just this morning I was working with a feed center manager, and on the feeding software it said the close-up cows ran out of feed 5 of the last 10 days, and it was like, well, this is a really big issue. We've been having a few milk fevers. Like, this is obviously the issue. But I've learned not to take that at face value and go to the person first and say, are we even entering waybacks every day? And like, no, this guy who feeds every other day doesn't enter wayback. So to me, it just opens the window, make sure that you don't take the data in the dairy industry at face value, because a lot of times it requires manual input, manual things, and that's always
Right.
prone to error or missing. So that's one thing that I've learned for
Yeah.
sure over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for me, it's about you start with the data, but you hold on to that really loosely because a mentor told me cows will make liars out of all of us.
Yeah.
I know we've all had that experience, right? And,
Yep.
Similar to you come out of college, you join the industry, you really are data driven, you think you got it figured out. And then the more you do this, the more you realize how little we actually know. And, in some areas. To me, the barn is always a better indicator than what you think is going to be the outcome.
I agree with you, Caleb, and to reinforce that too, data cannot replace a good herd, a good cow person
Yeah.
that will
For sure.
know how to look at those cows and look at that barn, right? I like to think that data is a helper. It helps you do what you need to do every day. And again, like I said before, augment you, right? Helps you do that, but it doesn't replace you actually
Yeah.
looking at what the system, what's going on in the system, what's the environment telling you. The cows just they don't want to get up today because it's kind of cold. Is there something else going on? And a good cow person is going to look at that and get that experience and say, no, this is what's going on.
The more I do this, the more I think that being a consultant is like more of an art than a science. It really is. Just having an eye for the cows and what they're telling you.
Yeah, and I'd almost say it's more art than science, and it's more coaching than it is directing, if you will. That, especially around the data space, we all said that, we really enjoy data. Oftentimes, clients don't enjoy data.
Right.
So that's one area that I find myself, trying to contribute to the team in a bigger fashion, as being some sort of data coach, making sure I'm evaluating, is this good data,
Yeah.
bad data? How do we get this in a better spot? Can I help build a better spreadsheet? Can I help filter this somehow to make it more clear for the dairy?
So along those lines, what's a metric that you think dairymen rely too heavily upon, and what should they look at instead? Would anybody have an example of that?
Okay, I'll be controversial here.
Yeah.
But milk yield, milk
Yeah.
per cow per day.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many variables for that, and that can tell you a good story or a bad story. You can be making a lot of milk in a day, but if your butterfat is down, your rumination is down, your cows are all sick, it doesn't mean you're actually being you're sustainable for your farm, right? It's not going to stay here for long. So I always think of that milk yield, milk per cow per day is a tricky, dangerous metric to follow. You got to follow more of what else is going on. Is my herd healthy? Am I being profitable with what we're doing?
Yeah, that's actually the one that I was going to say, and agree with you. It's somewhat controversial, right? Because the equation for total pounds of solids or energy corrected milk or whatever metric that we want to use instead of pounds of fluid's part of it, right? So I think the fact that it's part of the equation, what makes it difficult. The other thing I wish our industry would get over, and this is probably in the processor's court, is most milk checks still calculate, some point on the milk check price per carrot weight, right? So that in itself is incentivizing dairies to look at things on a carrot weight or a fluid milk basis, when in reality, the calculation is around pounds of protein and pounds of other solids, pounds of fat, not, price per carrot weight. So I think it's part of the industry that needs to continue to adapt, right? We've been in a component-based market for a long time,
Right.
but still haven't fully transitioned to thinking component yields.
About feed
Yeah.
costs per cow per day. I think that's one that needs challenged or looked at deeper, because you can have a really low feed cost, but if you're getting low yield, does it pay?
Right.
So I think looking at the two and together is income over feed costs is obviously much better.
Yeah, or is feed cost per cow per day high just because their intake is high or
Right.
something like that? It's
Exactly.
hard to diagnose where that cost is coming from.
Yeah. Awesome. So we talked a little bit about, we were talking earlier about change and change management when we talked about how do we get them through the resistance of change. They're always going to resist change, but kind of along those lines about pressure testing change. How do you know when an idea is worth pushing versus just letting it go?
Oh, I battle this one all the time.
Yeah, so to me, in dairy, there's black and white issues, and then there's a lot of gray issues. And the black and white issues are issues you have to get right. And so if I feel that what I'm pushing is a black and white issue, like, no, the industry has figured this out, we know this is going to be better, then it's worth pushing through. If it's a gray area and it's something that I think might be marginally better, but maybe not in every situation, then that's one I'm going to be more likely to back off on if it's met with resistance.
Kind of feel them out a little bit.
What's a black and white issue for you?
Oh, cow comfort, comes to mind, right? If it's something that I know is going to improve cow comfort, I'll continue to push it. But
Do you have an example?
Well, mine is along the way. Some of it's feed management, right? Like,
Yeah,
you can't run cows out of feed. Yeah, feed's got to be consistent along the length of bug. The one I always get caught up on is when you're dealt with would you rather type situation. Would you rather have cows on mattresses or water beds? Be like, well, I'd rather them be on neither, like, right? But a lot of times you're put in different situations where you don't have the opportunity for the gold standard, right? So we're always dealing with suboptimal situations. So it's
Right.
how do you guide through that sometimes?
and we don't write the checks,
Yep.
so it's in the end, it's never our final decision.
Absolutely agree. And you got to think about what you just said before: income over cost, right? Over investment cost you. When you make those decisions, I feel like you have to put it on paper, write down, see what those numbers look for you, and that can help the decision making process, right?
A really good dairyman that I work with always reminds me, we're not a nonprofit, and it's true.
And a boss one time told me is like, not everybody wants what you want. Sometimes we try to drive them toward what we want instead of what they're really looking for. But
If I could make one more comment on that one,
Yeah.
King, I always find myself, I empathize with the client, right? To your point that it's their money, it's their decision, but I always find that they need to be probably one step firmer in a lot of the recommendations, a lot of things. So I always have to take one more step. Not that I expect them to invest in everything that I
Right.
say or follow every practice, but if I don't make that extra step or extra step of encouragement, it's not going to happen, right? It's one of those things,
Right.
shoot for the moon, you hit the stars, or vice versa, or whatever
Yeah.
that saying is. So my job is to try to get you one step further, and if we fall one step back, we're still in a really, really good spot.
Yep.
And sometimes that brings difficult conversations, but I usually feel like that's the only way to make everybody grow the leaders.
Yeah.
Bring those conversations.
Yeah, that brings up a question I saw earlier, and that's how do you help teams get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Well, it helps if you've worked with them for a long time
Yeah.
and you've been through a lot together.
Right. It's like being out of your comfort. So how do you help them see that sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone to make progress?
I think sometimes it's our job to get the process straightened out, actually, and take some time and make sure every step of that process is there. And we missed a step. Well, let's go back to it. It's not working. Let's go back to that step. What's going on? Let's move through step by step. Make sure we get comfortable doing this.
Maybe you think of an example of when something looked risky at first, but once it got implemented, it really paid off.
Yeah, I go back to like the people side, because this is probably where, to Caleb's beginning point, that I see probably most clients feel uncomfortable is with people, having uncomfortable conversations, coaching people. Oftentimes when we're talking about what tractor to buy or what technology is next or what barn to build, people have a lot of comfort in those decisions because they're very tangible. It's when you get outside those tangible things that things get harder to grasp and more uncomfortable. So I don't know if I have any tips or tricks because I'm probably that way myself. So the only way to do it is, the 10 seconds of courage and go and do it. Go and be uncomfortable for 10 seconds. And the next time you do it will be that much easier. And it's kind of just practice makes perfect of being uncomfortable.
That's good. Yeah.
If challenging the status quo starts with better questions, it also requires better tools. That's why GPS Dairy Consulting created The Barn, an online client portal designed to bring clarity, resources, and collaboration into one convenient space. Inside The Barn, you will find the full library of feed-fit modules, training resources for your team, and a collaborative forum where producers can also share insights and ideas. Progress happens when teams have access to the right information and the tools to act on it. To explore The Barn, connect with your GPS consultant or visit gpsdairy.com.
If a producer listening, we hope producers will be listening. They're listening today and wanted to challenge just one assumption on their and you wanted to challenge one assumption on their operation this month. What would you point them toward first? If you wanted to challenge one of your producers' assumptions.
I'll go back to what I started with. Don't just assume your employees are engaged or that they're happy working at your dairy or that they're doing all that they can do, accomplishing all that they can accomplish. That would be my challenge.
Yeah, mine would be don't assume protocols are getting done the way they're written. I think everybody knows that, right? That there's procedural drift, milking procedures change, feeding behavior changes. But the challenge there is we know that we can't assume that. What are you going to do about it? And to me, that's where that observation, those, going to ride with the feeder once in a while, go stand in the parlor, and don't just rely along for middle managers or somebody else on your team to do it and report back to you, right? Take the time and the opportunity to go and meet with your team and understand actually what's getting done on the dairy. Obviously, as consultants, we try to do that, right? We try to observe what's going on, but it doesn't replace you going out and participating with your team to see what's going on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
I would complement that to don't assume it's good enough today. I've seen a lot of that. Well, how's it going? It's doing good. Okay, great. What's next? Always fight for that. What's next? What are we thinking about? What's our next project? Or how do we get better? Is our preg rate 34? Can we get to 36 without doing much? Is there a possibility? Is our accuracies feeding cows 97%? How do we get to 99? What do we do here? So I'd say don't ever assume it's good enough. It can be better.
Very good. So what's the difference between questioning something productively and just being disruptive? So we have to ask a lot of questions to our producers. We have change to implement and things like that. And how do you make sure you're on the right side of that line? Am I really challenging something that's going to be productive, or am I just trying to be disruptive?
Being disruptive for me is like building a wall. Being productive is like building a door. So in your dairy, are you building a wall or are you building a door? What are you doing? That wall won't get you anywhere. That door will open possibilities, right? That's what I think about those.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a comment that you made too, King. You said, being aware of what the client's goals are. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I find if one of my lines of questioning doesn't include like what their aspirations or what their intentions are with the process, I'm totally missing the mark on my line of questioning. Because perhaps what I have in store for the dairy is completely different than what they have, desired for themselves. So making sure I understand what the end point is before I really start to disrupt the apple cart, if you will.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I have to ask myself, who am I doing this for? Am I making this suggestion so that I look better or so that it improves the dairy, right? The answer should always be so that it improves the dairy. And does this align with the goals like you talked about?
I always think to myself, never forget who owns the cows, right? Mm-hmm. Should do the best job for them. Hey, one more question. You guys are out of here. What's one area of dairy management that you think will look very different 5 years from now? Why?
I'll go first. Well, I think we've gone, just like a lot of things in the dairy industry, full circle, where we went from managing an individual cow to managing by pen or by farm, and now we're reverting back to managing by cow. And a lot of this is because of the tech and data that we now have available, right? When they were all in tie stalls, right? They all had their name. We knew how much they milked. We fed them all with a scoop. Yep, that was all great.
Right.
Went free stalls, managed the barn, managed the pen. But now we have activity rumination systems. Now we can pinpoint what that cow is doing, health, repro. We have individual milk weights. We can pinpoint that. Still don't really manage feed on an individual cow basis, but we still start to really understand the individual cows that make up the herd. So to me, I see the next 5 years that's going to continue to get pinpointed and hopefully more proactive, so we can not only say this cow is sick today, but 2 weeks before, 1 month before, her rumination's a little bit more variable than it should be. What can we implement today to improve her status, a month from now type deal. So that's probably the biggest change that I see.
Yeah, I agree with everything Trent said, and Andre touched on earlier, but the use of AI cameras, I think, is going to really change the game. I'm very intrigued by some of the research coming out on that and some of the things they're doing with that. And then a lot of farms have already gone this route. This is not new news, but locking up cows to me is just a thing that should be in the past. We have the technology and tools to not lock up pens of cows anymore. May take some facility changes, but as dairies move along and move forward, I see that going away.
I agree with you too. I think we can't forget about what's going on in the world right now and what the employee situation can be 5 years from now. We don't know. I don't think anybody knows, but I think we just have to be very on top of that and understand what's going to happen with employee and then jobs in the industry in the future.
I think we need to do a better job as an industry of advertising the use of technology that we have and drawing on a new pool of employees and a new pool of managers, just because it's a cool job. You get to work with awesome technology and awesome stuff. And I think we're underutilizing.
I agree with the advertisement, mostly because also, we're feeding the world. It's an important job to put food on the table. And with the technology, bringing the young generation in, that would be very interesting, very good.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a mindset that no one would want to work on a farm anymore, right? And why is that the case? I don't see that. I don't understand that.
Yeah, maybe back to the question about what's going to be different in the industry 5 years from now. The workforce, I think, is going to look a whole lot different than it does right now because of all the technology and the things that are coming. Yeah. So, well, guys, thanks for joining us on this edition of Ahead of the Herd, leading with results. I think the audience is going to see how much you can bring to the dairies, how much more you'll bring to the dairy than I do in a lot of situations. So, thanks for joining us, and look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, thanks, King.
Thank you.
Today's conversation was about questioning assumptions, not for the sake of change, but for the sake of progress. What you heard today reflects how GPS Dairy Consulting approaches the work every day, with accountability, leadership building, and a commitment to results that move dairies forward. This series highlights the next generation of GPS consultants, not because they're new to the industry, but because they're prepared to lead, challenge assumptions, and take ownership of outcomes. Thanks for listening to Ahead of the Herd, Results That Lead, a GPS DairyCAST series.